Hello and welcome to this video interview with The Wire. Today we have with us Shalini Gera. Shalini is a member of the Jagdalpur Legal Aid Group, which is a collective of 4 women who provide legal assistance to Adivasis in Bastar. Recently, Shalini Gera has been in the news because it has been alleged that she has exchanged old currency for the Maoists. This complaint strangely surfaced on a WhatsApp group. And then Shalini got a call from an unofficial phone number, and the caller claimed to be the Superintendent of Police R.N. Dash, and he was inquiring about the details of the complaint. So just to start you off, Shalini, can you tell us about the recent status of the case? Have the police formally moved on it? And because it's kind of a strange situation where we don't have any clear information about what actually happened. So can you just update us on what's going on?
So as the case stands right now, there appears to be a written complaint against me and members of my team, which has been given to the SP of Bastar district. After that, there have been numerous press conferences by the IG of Bastar range, Mr. Kalluri, and the SP R.N. Dash, where they have informed the police that they're investigating diligently into this case, and there has been no FIR filed as of now that we know of. That's the formal status. Now, it is interesting to note that this complaint surfaced right after we had gone to Bastar in order to carry out a court-ordered exhumation and post-mortem of person who had been killed by the police in what was alleged as a fake encounter. So everybody is seeing this as a reprisal by the Bastar police against the human rights workers who have been highlighting instances of fake encounters and other violations by the police in the area.
Okay, so this cannot be seen as an isolated incident. Earlier this year as well, Isha Khandelwal, another member of your group, and you were forced to move out of Bastar. And also there have been numerous attempts to crack down on human rights defenders, journalists, lawyers and civil society activists. Recently, some activists from Telangana were charged with the Chhattisgarh Public Security Act. So this fits in a certain design, administrative design, so to speak, where it appears that the police doesn't want some information to be brought out from that region. What are your thoughts on that?
You're absolutely correct. There's a long history of the police really having very vindictive actions against others who have been raising issues of human rights violations by the police and security forces in the area. It has happened before, starting from, say, much earlier when Akhil Kumar, who was raising many of these issues during the time of Salva Judum, his ashram was broken down and he was forced out of that area. Even then, there was lots of reprisals against tribal leaders such as Manish Kunjam, and one of the petitioners of the Salva Judum case, Kartam Joga, he was actually imprisoned and kept in jail for many years. And much more recently, as you mentioned, we were evicted from Jagdalpur. Along with us, there is Malini Subramaniam, a well-known journalist writing for Scroll.in, who was also evicted at the same time. Bela Bhatia, who's been a researcher and living out of Jagdalpur, she has been also attacked. She has received many threats against her. There has been Soni Sori, a tribal activist, again, who's been raising many questions about what the police is doing to Adivasis. She had a chemical attack against her. More recently, there were police burning effigies of tribal rights activists, social activists in the area, and this is completely unprecedented, that you would actually have police burning effigies of who they see as their enemies. And it didn't happen in 1 or 2 districts, it happened in all 7 districts of Bastar. There has been an FIR filed against Professor Nandini Sundar, Professor Archana Prasad, and others who went with them on a fact-finding team. And as you said, more recently, there have been 7 people from Telangana, including lawyers, journalists, students, who were coming to Bastar to do a fact-finding on the recent spate of encounters. and they have actually been arrested. So far, they're still languishing in prison. Their bail has been denied, and we don't know how long they're going to be in prison for. So there certainly seems to be a emergency-like situation in Bastar, where anybody who speaks out or anybody who questions the motives or the designs of the police or the way they're conducting their operation, police and security forces, is declared an enemy of the state and is proceeded against in a most vehement and a most aggressive manner. This is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just what is happening to human rights activists. And I must say that what is happening to the tribals in the area, what is happening to the Adivasis who are living in the area, that's much, much, much worse. Just this year, the year that has just passed, 2016, there have been 134 recorded encounters by the police. So 134 people have been killed in the anti-Maoist operations in Bastar by the police. Many of them have been alleged to be fake encounters by the villagers, and we're not even allowed to investigate them, and we're not even allowed to take up their cases and bring them to the court, because if we do, then we are ourselves targeted as being anti-state and anti-national and put in these false cases. There have been at least 3 documented cases of mass sexual violence against women in Bastar, and just numerous cases of forced surrenders, false arrests, and the spate of violence that an ordinary villager is facing in Bastar is really intense at this point.
Okay, coming back to the nature of your own work, can you tell us, what exactly is the kind of legal assistance that you provide to the Adivasis, and why do you think it is important? Why is there a need for you to come from Delhi and settle there and help the Adivasis in their cases, in their legal cases?
In 2013, we started Jagdalpur Legal Aid Group, and there were at that time 3 lawyers, 3 women lawyers were there. And we went with a very general idea that we're going to an area where there is a marginalized population, vulnerable people, and we should be providing some kind of legal assistance to them. Given that there is a large need, because it's a needy population over there, of course, it was in the background that there is a conflict, and conflict has its own legal necessities, and we should be looking into that as well. When we went over there, we had a general idea that it would be women-related issues, it would be some conflict-related issues, some land-related issues, which is the kind of stuff you would find in a regular area. But I must say that when we went over there, the needs arising out of the conflict were far greater than the needs that were coming from other areas. So as time went on, we found that we were being pulled into cases which are largely around issues of people who are languishing for years in prison, under trials. Their trials are not proceeding, and they're all charged with heinous crimes of participating in Naxalite actions. But for many, many reasons, they're not getting any relief from the courts, and the cases are going on forever. We were pulled into cases where villagers would ask us to come because the police had visited that area, police and security forces, and they had indulged in looting. It's very common that when large numbers of police go, they loot chicken, they loot just regular grains, clothes, etc. They indulge in beating. It's fairly common, and villagers wanted to lodge cases against them. We got increasingly pulled into these issues, and we realized that actually the courts were flooded with these kind of issues. There were no issues regarding land or domestic violence or women-related issues. We were not just seeing enough of them. Most of the issues the courts were dealing with were arising out of this conflict, and that is where we got pulled into as well. As time went by and we got more and more familiar with the villagers, then of recent past we've been called into more and more to help them with more and more grave issues, as I mentioned, cases of mass sexual violence against women, and increasingly encounters. We've just filed a case in the Bilaspur High Court, a PIL, about encounters in the district of Bijapur. We've been working on the cases of other related cases as well.
So we have also heard a lot about some vigilante groups acting in the area. They forced Malini Subramaniam out. They created a ruckus outside her home. They have also threatened a lot of activists and lawyers and other human rights workers working there. And they seem to be continually being emboldened somehow. So, and there have also been allegations that these groups are supported by the state. These are state-sponsored groups somehow. So, have they also interfered with the working of your organization, Jagdalpur Legal Aid Group? And if yes, how?
Yeah. You're absolutely correct. There are these vigilante groups, and again, there's a long history of the police actually fronting these groups. Even from Salva Judum onwards, Salva Judum itself was a state-sponsored vigilante group that was declared unconstitutional, that had to die out. But in 2015, we saw the emergence of something called the Samajik Ekta Manch. Along with the Samajik Ekta Manch, which was in Bastar district, there were other groups in other districts, Naxal Pirit Sangharsh Samiti in Bijapur, etc., which were these vigilante groups. And they would take out rallies against the so-called, what they would call Safed Posh Naxali, which were, or Naxali Samarthak, the white-collar Naxalites, basically against human rights workers or people who were again raising issues that were inconvenient for the police. Against Malini Subramaniam, they surrounded her house and threw stones, and eventually she had to leave Jagdalpur. They also held rallies against us when we were in Jagdalpur, against when women when tribal women who were seeking a redressal for sexual violence crimes against them went to Bijapur Collectorate. They surrounded the Collectorate of Bijapur and again raised slogans against these women and Soni Sori and Bila Bhatia, who were there to help them. So they have been extremely active, but following an NHRC inquiry into them, and also they received some bad press when there were some sting operations done by media in March and April last year, which showed that they were being directly sponsored by the police. The media actually caught the police, the superintendent of police and some other police officials on tape, admitting to the fact that they were actually sponsoring Samajik Ekta Manch, etc. So following this bad publicity, the Samajik Ekta Manch was disbanded. But that was only reprieve for a few months, because the very same people were then again put into a group called Agni Action Group for National Integration or something like that. And the same people have again been active, again being fronted by the police. Now, I must say that in our case also, the current case, that is the complaint that is against us, these groups have again played a very important role of stoking and inflaming passions. And again, the close nexus between these groups and the police has come to the fore. For instance, when the Superintendent of Police Bastar called me on 27th December, he used a private number to call me. And since I could not recognize that number, I spoke to him, but I wasn't really sure whether it was the SP of Bastar calling me or not. I checked that number on these mobile apps, and I found that that number belonged to one Mr. Farooq Ali, who is a member of Agni and one of the most vocal supporters of Agni, and is very, very defamatory to other human rights workers. I had to be sure that I had indeed talked to the SP of Bastar on Mr. Farooq Ali's call, or Mr. Farooq Ali's phone. I had to call him back. So I called up the SP of Bastar and confirmed that yes, indeed he had called me from that number. So that raises a big question. Why is the SP of Bastar using Mr. Farooq Ali's phone to call me and threaten me and intimidate me with charging me in a false case? And very soon after he talked to me, the complaint, the so-called written complaint against me, is made viral again by the same Mr. Farooq Ali on various WhatsApp messages. So it's not only that the SP of police is using Mr. Farooq Ali's phone, but he's also giving all information about my complaint to Mr. Farooq Ali, who is then spreading it and defaming me. Again, in a very similar manner, a few days prior to that, we had a PUCL meeting in Dantewada, where we were facilitating the meeting of PUCL delegates with local villagers. While the meeting went on one day, the next day the police started harassing the organizers of this meeting, and they stopped 6 of our volunteers and detained them for an hour or so, questioned them, took their mugshots, and harassed them about this meeting. Anyway, the volunteers complied, gave all the information that the police was looking for, and left from there. A few hours later, this information about the volunteers, their names, etc., and their mugshots that had been taken by the police, again surfaced in this WhatsApp message by the same Mr. Farooq Ali. So he again seems to have information that the police has and the police has taken for official purposes is being made available to this. And again, these messages are being floated around that these are all quote-unquote JNU students who are, incidentally, none of them was from JNU, but in the WhatsApp messages, they're all photographs are shown and they're defamed as being JNU students who are there as Naxalite supporters and are poisoning the minds of villagers with Naxalite propaganda. So again, this kind of connection, this nexus between these vigilante forces and these private individuals who are being really fronted by the police, they're being given supplied information and being used by the police to do their own dirty work, that is extremely distressing.
So you think these are just pressure tactics used by the police to create a certain image of human rights defenders working in Bastar, and they aren't really going to seriously follow through because they really won't be able to come up with evidence to act on the complaints? Do you think that?
I would like to think that that is the way it's going to happen, but we have to be cautious. We don't really know how the police operates in certain circumstances. While it's very true that they are definitely utilizing the media to defame and to inflame passions and to paint these human rights defenders or human rights activists as this Safed Posh Naxali, that all these tactics do end up creating an atmosphere of terror and intimidation for people in Bastar. So while I might not be in jail today, anybody in Bastar would be scared of working with me because they don't know exactly what is going to happen. And then we have to also take the case of 7 Telangana activists who are actually in jail today on very similar charges, again of exchanging money for, again trumped up charges of exchanging money for Naxalites. But it's going to take, they will definitely get acquitted at the end, but it's going to be, I don't know, months, years. We don't know how long they'll have to be in jail before they get acquitted. Again, taking the case of Mr. Kirtan Joga, who again got acquitted. Soni Sori, she again gets acquitted in cases, but that does mean that you end up spending a lot of time in jail and spending a lot of resources and just energy fighting these baseless charges rather than doing the work that you would like to be doing.
So one of the names that we keep hearing when we talk about Bastar is the Inspector General SP Kalluri.
SRP Kalluri.
Yeah, SRP Kalluri. So it is often alleged that he acts with total impunity and doesn't really care about the rule of the law. And so why do you think that is? Do you think he has backing of the state government or perhaps the national government? And what could be the reason behind him getting such impunity?
Well, it's definitely there that he works with impunity, and he's been time and again the actions he's been done have been overturned by the courts. The NHRC had given the status of human rights and the absurd charges that were levied against human rights defenders, and then growing fear and intimidation for human rights workers in the area. The NHRC had taken suo motu cognizance last year of the situation and had summoned Mr. Kalluri. And that's a completely unprecedented event, that they would actually summon the IG of police. So obviously this displeasure at what was happening in the state was very evident. He did not show up for the summons because he was in a hospital at that time. But it also doesn't seem to have this act of being summoned by the highest national human rights body in the country doesn't seem to have quietened him down or given any signal to him that he should stop his terror tactics, because he is continuing with the same spate. So he's definitely acting with impunity. One can only speculate where he gets his impunity from. We are not privy to any of the information that goes back and forth. But it is true that just mere political pressure or something is not working against him. The opposition party, the main opposition party in Chhattisgarh, Congress, has been like shouting from the rooftops, saying that Mr. Kalluri is indulging in many grave acts of terror and violation of rights. And as I said, the courts have time and again overturned his actions, but that is not giving a signal to anybody, any of his political masters or any of his administrative masters, to rein him in. So one can only speculate whether it's the national government that's sponsoring him or the state government. But yes, when Mr. Narendra Modi came to Bastar, he did meet with him. When the CM Raman Singh goes to Bastar, he definitely speaks well of him. We don't know what the source of his impunity is.
Would you say that the local Adivasis in Bastar can't really pin their hope on the police and the administration to get justice?
I would definitely say that has not been the case so far. We have seen even in instances where they wanted to file an FIR against a police action. They have really had to struggle a lot, and FIRs are not forthcoming. We've had to go to courts to get FIRs filed. We've had the case where even something like the National Commission of Scheduled Tribes, the chairperson, he has visited and he has upheld the fact. He said that there's prima facie evidence that there's been mass sexual violence against women conducted by security forces. It's been over a year and FIR has been registered. In fact, it was the first FIR in the country under the newly amended rape laws, which have made rape by security forces a special category of aggravated rape. It was the first FIR in the country using that section, and yet over a year has passed and no action has been taken by the police in those FIRs. So one does feel that there is very little hope by going to the police and the administration, and we are asking for the judiciary has to step in, or the National Human Rights Commission has to step in to take action at this point.
So with little hope from the police and administration, and as we have already seen that the media is also not being able to do its job of getting information from there and spreading it across the country, because the journalists from outside the region have been driven out of there from vigilante forces or state pressure, and the local journalists are often charged in cases where they are acquitted later. So this has also created a sort of a information blackout in the region. So is now the judiciary their only hope for some justice?
Okay, I think definitely a lot of us are pinning our hopes on the judiciary, and as I mentioned, the National Human Rights Commission. As I mentioned before, the National Human Rights Commission has taken the unprecedented step of summoning both Mr. Kalluri as well as the Chief Secretary of the State, taking note of the worsening human rights situation in the district of Bastar, and they're being summoned again on January 16th, and we are really hoping that they will take strong action. So these two are the judiciary and the National Human Rights Commission are two bodies that we are definitely hoping. But I do pin my hopes on ordinary people as well. While you're quite correct that there is a huge information blackout, etc., but still we're seeing time and again the media has been active in highlighting many case instances. In spite of all the repression, there are still reporters in the area who are brave enough to still put out the news, and one hopes that in spite of all the repression and oppression, they will still have the courage to keep speaking out. In spite of all that has happened, there are still voices of tribal leaders again who, despite living in fear and oppression and constant state harassment, they're still speaking out. So I think, all salutes to them for still having the courage to stay over there, face the harassment, and one can only support them and wish them all luck.
Also, personally, what do you plan to do next with with this atmosphere of intimidation and also these allegations floating around? Do you also feel a kind of fear and insecurity in going back and continuing the work that you were doing? And how do you plan to proceed from here?
So it's a little too soon for me to make any long-term plans, and the way it is in Bastar, every time you make a long-term plan, something or the other always unseats it. So I really can't say that there are many firm plans. It's true there's fear and intimidation, but then we've been living with that fear and intimidation for over a year now. We still plan to continue our work, and while I'm here in Delhi, there are still colleagues in Chhattisgarh who are still continuing the work. It is going to be more difficult to go back to Bastar while this complaint still hangs over our head. So we're looking into legal options, and again, as I said, we're discussing all those over here. Can't really say what the next plans are because they aren't there yet.
Yeah, okay. So I think that would be all. Thank you for joining us, Shalini.
Thank you very much.